Zach, I try to remind myself that everyone feels pain and agony in their own way, however they digest it. So I hate to try to say, well, my pain is more than your pain as we're experiencing something similar. But would it be fair if I asked the question, who underwent more pain? Guardians fans having watched their team drop 8 of their last 11 and just looking lifeless and dead in many of those outings, or myself coming out of kidney surgery and still recovering and clearly not at 100%. I don't know. Is that a fair question to try to rank those two?
Did you watch their games while you were stuck in the hospital or on your couch?
So here's what I was thinking. If I had the option, I could go back in time and I could have the option of watching every pitch of the just what I missed, because I had the procedure on Friday and I'm still recovering. So that's why we're delayed a day, and the schedule for the next couple of weeks is going to be all over the place based on moves and travel, and it's going to be all over the place. So just keep it locked to your podcast catchers and your YouTubes and your Spotifys, and of course at Patreon as well. But would I rather go back to Friday and relive all of that just as a fan, or go through the procedure again? I think I'd rather experience the Guardians part, but still, it's probably a close call for many.
It was all the themes. It's been such a weird season. It's a difficult season to analyze because did we really think this team was winning 108 games when things were going really well? Probably not, right?
You're not going to hit me with that, are you?
No,
you're not going to hit me with it. Well, nobody thought they were going to be here, so it's all okay.
No, I'm not sugarcoating. They've been dreadful the last few weeks. Everybody is slumping offensively. There's been regression to the mean in terms of clutch hitting. There's been just a disappointing lack of young players emerging as everyday threats. There's been no improvement in the starting rotation. I believe me, this has been bad. But what do we always say on this show? The truth lies somewhere in the middle.
It depends. Oh, okay, that too.
Hit the music. They were never. I don't think they were ever when they were 51-26. I don't think you should have been cashing your over 107.5 wins bet. And right now, I don't think that, as I decided, I've stayed off of Twitter a lot more this year than normal. It's been healthy. But I decided last night, let's have some fun. Let's read every single reply. And they need to be sellers.
Was that fun?
It was fun, yeah. I missed it. They need to be sellers, let's go by these one by one, actually. Let's start. They need to sell at the deadline. What's your take on that? I know you've been out of action for a few days, but I mean they're 59-40. They're one game behind the Orioles for the best record in the American League. Would you sell, and what would you sell?
Justin Sellers?
He had a lot of tattoos. That's all I remember.
What would you sell? What would you trade? Would you make Ben Lively available and you say, hey, somebody just carry on this until it turns into a pumpkin at some point, but hey, it's a pitcher that's giving you innings. So you could trade a Ben Lively. You could trade a reliever.
Josh Naylor.
You could trade Josh Naylor. I don't know. What would teams give you for Emmanuel Clase? Would all the teams that are frustrated that the Athletics aren't trading Miller, could you get whatever that haul would be for Clase?
Probably.
Maybe they were onto something.
Okay.
No, I don't think they were onto something.
Gripe number 2. This is who they've been all along. This is reality. You buying that?
No, because I don't think they're this bad either.
And that's kind of my
Were
point.
they as good as they were when they were heads and tails above the American League? No. And everybody else in the American League was also playing pretty well? No. Are they this bad though? No, because I want to go through some of these statistics, which are just ridiculous as I'm reading through them. It, oftentimes it feels like the offense, when the offense is sputtering, it just is lifeless. There's nothing that you want to grab onto, even when the pitching can be good. But when you're getting no clutch hits or no hits at all, everything feels awful. But I've gone through and looked at the numbers, and it is as bad in the stretch as you would believe, as your brain would tell you. It's pretty ridiculous, actually.
They had 4 all-star hitters, which seemed inconceivable months ago, but all 4 have slumped really badly the last month. And the issue is, for a while, when Jose Ramirez got off to a slow start, well, you had Josh Naylor and David Fry going nuclear early on, and then when Kwan was injured, Jose Ramirez caught fire, and now it's all of them in a funk, and there just isn't anyone to come to the rescue. Schneemann has been miserable lately. Tyler Freeman had a couple hits against Tarek Skubal, but he's had a rough year at the plate. Brian Rocchio, I think, is somewhere like passing Mansfield on I-71 right now. And also,
say what?
But
what was that?
Well, he was packing up his locker. A big cardboard box. He was throwing cologne and clothes, equipment in it.
You don't just do that for no reason, right?
Maybe he was switching lockers?
Collecting office chairs? No. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I can just cross this out then. Later on, I have down on my list Rocchio. Should he keep playing? What should they do at shortstop, at second
follow
base?
The Discord, man. Are you a member of the Discord?
I've been lacking in updates on my phone here. I've been getting text messages from people. Hey, how are you? How are things? I've been neglecting. I'm sorry. That's on me. I'll put that on me.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if it was Juan Burrito. Wouldn't shock me if it was Kyle Manzardo. They could troll everybody and recall Gabriel Arias.
Kyle Manzardo is playing shortstop?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I guess at this point, you're desperate. You try anything.
No, I could see them playing Freeman at short, though.
Miss a weekend, miss a lot.
I think it was pretty telling that Angel Martinez was in center. And Tyler Freeman was at second base last night.
Right. I was going to raise that point. Freeman, I thought the fact that they started him in the infield, that spoke volumes to me. Mm-hmm. Either he's going to start taking in some time at second base, and it's not that he's been great himself. I mean, actually in the last few games, he's been one of their best hitters. Not saying a lot about the rest of the offense, but he has been. He's shown some life while others have not. And I was wondering, is that the precursor to him now getting more time at second or at shortstop, as you're saying? But we've been talking about Jimenez, and Jimenez has had his own problems offensively.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the best thing to be moving him across the infield in the middle of the year when he's got all these other things going on? I don't know. Is he going to be at his best defensively at shortstop if he's moved in the middle of the year? I don't know.
He hasn't done enough offensively to justify holding that sort of power.
Well, long term isn't. We've already said he's going to end up at shortstop.
Right. Do it now.
If he's a member of this team, he's going to play shortstop because Travis Bazan is going to be up at second base within the year. So why not make that move now with a team that could use the shakeup on the infield because nobody else is emerging as an answer at shortstop?
Yeah, that'd be a way to get Juan Burrito into the mix too, because I don't know where he fits in this picture otherwise. And he's a good bat. Like that's, I don't know. Or you just trade him in the next week. There's a lot going on. This is a busy little stretch. And by the way, the Tigers, who have looked invincible when they play the Guardians this year, you get them, then you go to Philly, then you come home, or you go to Detroit for a couple days, and then you get the Orioles, then you get the Diamondbacks, who have been surging, then you go to the Twins for 4 games in 3 days. Whew, it's not getting easier.
So you don't want to play the schedule game right now?
No.
Vibes probably not good enough to play the schedule game.
No, I mean, we usually come on here, it felt like so often in the first half, it would be, you play the club party music, fans would just tune in to feel good about life. And now, I think we need to mix it up. I think we need like some sad. This is called sad violin. Because that's also
you
what I
want to
was
lean
seeing in my
you want
replies
to
last
lean
night.
into
The
it.
season's over.
You want to lean into it. Guardians now just holding off the Twins and surging Royals, by the way. 4 games back for both of those. Maybe the Twins need to look out for themselves. They got the Royals coming back over their shoulder. We've been saying the Twins, got to give them credit for playing better baseball heading into the All-Star break. And hey, we gave them that credit, but here come the Royals now. They're a force to be reckoned with, only 4 games back in this division.
Well, and Stephen Kwan, that batting title is not a guarantee like we may have thought a few weeks ago. Bobby Witt has been
what was the over-under you told me? You gave me an over-under when he was just redonkulous.
Like 365, maybe?
I think it was even lower than that. And I took the under. Somebody
350?
in the comments took me to task and said, really? Really? Okay, well, baseball's hard. It's really difficult to hit 350 over an entire season.
And
but that doesn't excuse. I know he'll rebound to an extent, but that doesn't excuse here. I don't think it's just regression that's been the problem for Stephen Kwan. Seems like he's a little bit out of sorts offensively, maybe through the process of trying to figure out how do I maintain a little bit more of this power plus maintain a plus average. How do I be both of these things? I don't want to say he's someone that's chasing home runs right now, because I really don't think Stephen Kwan would ever chase home runs. But I do wonder do you think he's a little bit out of whack offensively? And that's leading to the drop in batting average. He was 0 for his last 11 before he finally singled in his last at-bat last night. I mean, the fact that, and we'll get to all of them, but Kwan, Jose, and Josh Naylor, Jose has been okay in average, but power has just been completely lacking. What is it, 72 at-bats since his last home run at this point? And Josh Naylor, 3 for his last 25. These are your main dudes. And I guess the reason why I'm not panicking with my hair on fire is because these are the guys that brought you to the dance. And one of two things is going to happen. Either one, they wake up and they go back to being good players, which I think they are, and the offense comes back to life and things kind of even out, or they don't, and you're screwed regardless. And this conversation is pointless. So it's just kind of, do you believe in the guys that brought you to this point to, again, be good? If you do, then you just got to let them come out of it. I'm not saying they don't make adjustments themselves or they don't figure out what's plaguing them or make small little changes to help that recovery happen. But at the same time, like, there's nothing that can be done when your entire lineup just goes power outage, when they're all stuck in an Arctic frost.
And I think power outage is a good way to put it, because it feels like they've just stopped hitting home runs too. And I wasn't foolish enough to believe that this team was some murderer's row all of a sudden with a lot of the same players they had last season. But like, did they turn the jet stream off? Is that vortex tunnel? Is that over with? Can we put that to rest? Because where did the power go? They're slugging 342.
I don't have the answer. I mean, when Jose and Josh Naylor are your two big power bats, and Jose isn't doing anything in the power department, where did the power go? Well, ask the two big power guys in your lineup.
Yeah, I do think for a while they got away from their MO, working pitchers, getting deep into counts. I do think there's some validity to facing good pitchers and just running into a bad stretch at the same time. I mean, like Cease and King been two of the better pitchers in the league. Skubal could win the Cy Young. Jack Flaherty has been awesome. I think there's something to that. I just think that they've kind of gotten away from who they are. I don't know why. I think it was easy to explain going into the All-Star break that maybe they just needed the break. But that doesn't fly now. So it's easy to just assume that whatever you've watched recently is the new norm, and that's how it's going to be. I would trust that Kwan's going to find his way back. I wouldn't be too worried about him. Fry is a legitimate concern. He hasn't homered since like the aughts. And I don't know how much of it is the injury, how much of it is just him crashing back to reality. But there's concern there. He has not been the threat behind Ramirez and Naylor that you need him to be. Naylor has struggled too, and he was such a the power numbers are better this year, but man, wasn't he just a more imposing hitter last season? Because he could beat you in so many ways. And so I just, you have that, and then you just never got the emergence. Like Andres Jimenez has just never found it. You're waiting. Like, is Will Brennan part of this or not? I don't know. You're waiting to see what you have in Angel Martinez, and Rocchio has not worked out. Bo Naylor hasn't risen to the occasion. So it's just been, when you don't have those star players carrying you, there hasn't really been much else. And so I think that's, we've talked about it. Like they need help in the lineup. And it doesn't just have to be this year either. It's, some of this stuff, some of the things that they need to address at the trade deadline will still be issues to address this winter, which is why it would be beneficial in many instances to go acquire guys with multiple years of control.
Yeah, I was thinking about what does this stretch do to a front office's mindset heading into a very critical week in the upcoming trade deadline. Should the fact that you're scuffling on offensively, there are so many issues, so many holes, so many guys not rising to the occasion, as you said, your star players not playing like stars at the moment, your starting pitching is always teetering on the edge of disaster. And to be honest, I mean, for as much as gone wrong here recently, it hasn't always been the starting pitching that's kind of drawn my ire. Mm-hmm. At times they've been okay. They've held their own. Ben Lively give you an outing like his most recent one, you should try to win those games. You should be winning those games. Or Bybee. And I know Gavin Williams is still working his way back into form. I think he'll be there by the end of the year, closer to what his form would look like. Carrasco is what it is right now. We know they need the help in the starting rotation. They probably could need the help in the bullpen because guys are going to be getting to points. We're already seeing it a little bit. I think they're tiring out a little bit. Arms have never been in this position before. Got to power through that. Could use some depth there. Is the fact that all of these things are a problem, does that create an opportunity that you're excited about? Because that means, as we've said for weeks, you can address anything you want. You can make this team better in any area that presents itself. Or do you say there are way too many things to fix? This was already an evaluation year, which if there was one thing that was making me angry over the weekend, it was a lot of that, the evaluation word coming back. How do you address this? Does this make it any different than your outlook 2 weeks ago?
Some of this will be dictated by the market. There are a ton of pretty good to really good relievers who are available, and that's the easiest thing to trade for this time of year. So I'm with you. If you can find a bullpen arm who can help you and you don't have to give up much, just because you've had the league's best bullpen shouldn't preclude you from improving that area of the roster. It's a weird team to evaluate because we kept asking, how are they doing this? They're 51-26. It doesn't quite add up. What's real and what's not? And we came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. When you get off to that good of a start, you build yourself that cushion, and you have players to build around. You supplement that group, and you don't take the opportunity for granted. And I don't think that can change just because of a rough stretch. Think back to the Texas Rangers last year, who got off to a scorching hot start, crashed back to reality very hard. It was looking bleak there. They had to go play a wild card series and then go on the road, and like it was like they backed into the playoffs and they won the World Series. Doesn't mean that's going to happen all the time, and I'm not even saying that that's how this season has gone or will go for Cleveland, but it's 162 games. Like, you're going to have tough stretches that really test your mental makeup, and even for fans, I think it tests you. It makes you reevaluate what you thought about this team all along. And I don't think all along we thought this team was some 110. They weren't the 98 Yankees. They weren't the 95 Indians. They weren't the 01 Mariners. So there are going to be some like growing pains with young players, growing pains with a new coaching staff. We just somehow didn't see any of that for the first half of the season. So you have to like think about it in multiple ways at once, where it's, yeah, like this is still a flawed roster, and you're going to need to make moves to make sure that this team can win the division, to make sure that you're not going to war with like Carlos Carrasco against Tarek Skubal or Xavier Curry or with Daniel Schneemann hitting fifth. That's just not a fair fight. And so you got to do that. You also need internal improvements to make this thing really work. Like you said, Gavin Williams, I think, is the most important player on this roster for the rest of the regular season and maybe the playoffs. I think they need answers on, like, it's getting late in a hurry for Will Brennan, for Tyler Freeman, for these guys who, for Arias, guys who we've seen for more than just this season. So I don't think they were as good as they were when they were sitting on top of the world, winning 2 out of every 3. And I don't think they're as bad as we've seen the last few weeks. But you have to figure out what you are. And that's the job of the front office. And then you take that and you add to it to figure out how do you go from where you really are to what you need to be.
You can't address it thinking you're going to fix everything that ails this team and give this team the best shot by closing all the holes. It's not going to happen. Even when this team was playing at its best, there were still leaky spots on this roster, and namely at the back end of that rotation. Even when things were perfect, there were problem areas. They were overcoming it, they were getting enough offense, but there were still things that were plaguing this club. I think as you look at it today, you stop thinking in terms of you have to make this club perfect enough that it can go do damage in the playoffs. That's not, we're past that point now. Because still, I know the game's back. They're dwindling between you and the next closest teams in the American League Central, but you're still leading the charge now. You still have the amount of wins that you have now. You take advantage of seasons like this. Even when they are just fortunate, you still take advantage of it, even if it is because of good fortune. And I believe you just have to go out and improve what you can. Add to the offense. Add that pitcher if you can get it. Add that bullpen arm if you get it. Give your team the best shot that you can within reason. Because this is still, I know right now we're thinking about it in terms of just this year, but this is still a long-term, big picture sort of organization that we're looking at. And how do you position yourself to not only be good this year, but continue to be good for multiple years? Mm-hmm. If I were to zoom out and look at all the good things that are happening here, and it's a roster that is this young, that has the record that they do, and the amount of young hitters that we're really excited about seeing in the future, and just got the number 1 pick infused into your organization on top of that. You added some intriguing arms also to this list, and maybe you helped restart that pitching factory. Man, there's a lot to be excited about in the next several years. But let's add to that now by going out and getting an additional bat and going out and getting an additional starting arm. And is that going to give you the best shot to go win the World Series among all the other teams in the American League? No. But does that have an opportunity to make you better for multiple years, to maybe fix a problem that ails you now that is going to ail you next year? Perhaps. And if nothing else, it gives young players experience. It helps push everybody towards the ultimate goal of winning the World Series this year with the record that you do. I don't think it impacts my outlook whatsoever. I would just be looking to again, I keep saying it, when the pencils are down, my club needs to be better. And that's if I have done that, then I have done my job as a front office. Then we're going to let the rest of this play out the way that it needs to. But I'm not going to keep myself up at night going, well, I don't want to give up resources for a team I don't know if I believe in. No, you have to. You're in this position, you have to do something to make yourself better, to give you that shot.
Couple things. One, they learned last year that you need to be confident enough in your decision making to be in the clubhouse explaining your actions. They weren't in Houston last year. Mm-hmm. It was ugly. That's all I can say. I mean, it was players were not happy, coaches were not happy, and no matter how the front office might want to spin it to you, there's a reason they had to fly down at 6 a.m. the day after the trade deadline to Houston, okay? So you need to be able to explain yourself. And if you don't make a move after the first half that this team had, when they had the best record in the American League and they soared past every expectation you could set for them, can you go in that clubhouse and explain? Especially after the recent stretch. If they were still playing out of their minds and they were in first place, you could probably walk into that clubhouse. I don't think this would be the correct move, and I don't think everyone would buy into it, but you could go in there and say, you guys have been so good. We believe in you. We think you can keep this up. Now, I think some people might see through that bullshit. But after the recent stretch, where I think maybe some of those imperfections hit home in that clubhouse, where they realize, we might, like, they're human. Tanner Bybee said it. He said it the other night. I asked him, like, what's the difference here this year to last year? Like, can you sense last year the team was sellers, this year shouldn't be? And he even said, I hope we're in buy mode. Like, can you go in the clubhouse after this recent stretch and be like, hey, we think you guys are going to turn it around? No, I remember in 2012, they didn't make a move. And there were players sniping in the behind the scenes saying, like, Brent Lillibridge? That's the move we made? We got Brent Lillibridge? and they went 5-24 in August. That's not an excuse, but players pay attention to this stuff. They want that reinforcement that you believe in them. And I think this team, though, like, they need some help. The other thing is, 2 years ago, they were only down by a game in the standings at the trade deadline. They were a few games over 500. They were treading water for a while. They had an up and down August. Then they really caught fire in September, but they didn't make moves. Remember, their move in 22 was cutting ties with Franmil Reyes. So that was an example of a team that they weren't really sure what they had, and they didn't want to block young players, and so they didn't make a move. Last year, similar scenario where they're treading water. They're about a 500 team in the first half. Never really caught fire, got going. They were a game back. We know what happened. They've been waiting for a team to demonstrate something in the first few months, to give them a reason to believe, and this team did that. So you have to take advantage. We've seen this team so often in recent memory have a run-of-the-mill first half and a scorching hot second half. And when it happens that way, you can't predict the second half, so you don't make moves at the deadline, and you have what you have. This is a team that has so far done the opposite. So I think it's a team that deserves your investments, and yeah, I mean, we've been saying it for weeks. Like, it'd be a really big missed opportunity. And I think there are enough. We're seeing more teams announcing themselves as sellers or something in between, where the market will shift a little bit back toward the middle. Won't cost an arm and a leg to go get a rental starting pitcher. So there's no reason not to pounce.
I mean, even if it ultimately proves that this team is not good enough to just hang until the end of the year, but you went and made the moves to make yourself better, can't you still hold your head up high a little bit? I certainly, if I see two outcomes here, one where they just let this play out and they say, hey, well, there's a lot of young players here. There's a lot of holes. We want to continue to evaluate them, and we'll just see how the chips fall, and we'll maybe make some subtle pickups here. Some guy with a 530 FIP that could eat some innings, and maybe we'll pick that up.
Matthew Boyd.
There's that, or there's the one where you make some moves to make yourself legitimately better, and maybe you just don't get there at the end. But man,
At least you tried.
I'll give you some credit for trying. I think there, and we probably add to this. We're probably as guilty as anybody. There's a misnomer that everything just has to be perfect before you push all the chips in. And maybe it's going too far to
Look
say
at
push
2011.
all the chips in. But what stops anyone else? I'm just like pulling a name out of randomness, but like a 569 winning percentage team that's kind of teetering on the edge at the trade deadline. But doesn't the team usually go pick up something? Do they have any guarantee that they're going to make the postseason? No, of course not. Do they have any guarantee that that is going to fix all the problems? No. But they say it's really difficult in baseball unless you're a team like the Dodgers and Yankees and you're spending oodles and oodles of cash every single year. You know, what's their winning percentage today? Whatever it is. It's really difficult to be this many games into the season and have this winning percentage, regardless of how you got there. And yeah, we could start this over again next year and say, would this same group get to this point again? I don't know. But you're in the position now. It's tough to be in this position, so you capitalize on it. And even if it doesn't result in what you ultimately want, and aren't the odds pretty good that they're not going to win the World Series because everybody except for one doesn't? So what? The whole purpose of the sport is still to have fun and be entertained and hopefully win as many games as possible along the way. And we haven't seen a championship. Many people haven't seen a championship for this club in a long time. There's a drought here. Not sure if you're aware. In championships for this Cleveland club, keep the foot on the gas when you're in this position. And that's why I'll be very frustrated if you get to the trade deadline and they evaluate the club as being not quite good enough to make that investment. I think that's a foolish endeavor.
It's a good point. I mean, Cleveland's World Series drought is old enough to run for president. And I think there are good days ahead. Travis Bazzana has spent the last 4 or 5 days in Cleveland basically doing an onboarding process, meeting with everyone in the organization, taking batting practice, taking ground balls. He'll go to Lake County at the end of the week.
September?
No.
September call up? Oh.
He'll go to Lake County at the end of the week. That's the symbol of how this isn't just about 2024, but you do have a bright future, right? So Chase DeLauder could be in that lineup next season. Kyle Manzardo could be in that lineup soon. Like, there are a lot of pieces that are going to help you and keep this thing afloat. This 2022 was a surprise, and it was a surprise because they didn't quite have the infrastructure where we could say, oh, they're going to be good for a long time. I feel differently about that now. It's not without needs. Like, they're going to have to address the starting rotation this summer, this winter, probably both. But there is the base here to be a legitimate contender for the foreseeable future. Now, clock's ticking on Josh Naylor. Clock's ticking on Jose Ramirez, just age-wise. And I think the big thing, though, is you have to, and they always look at this, they would, if you had a rental here and a player signed with multiple years of team control over here, and yes, the player with multiple years of team control is always going to cost more, they'd always prefer to go that route. So there you go. In 2011, they were also right around the 500 mark. At the end of July, they were 53 and 52. They were 2.5 games out. I don't think that team, if you gave them truth serum, I don't think the front office believed that the 2011 Cleveland Indians were going to win the World Series. with Mitch Talbot and David Huff in the rotation. But after they had lost 90 plus games 3 of 4 years, I think they had, or the previous 2 years they had lost 90 plus games. I think they felt like they had a young nucleus they could build around, and it was the start of something. And they went and they traded for Ubaldo Jimenez, who had 2.5 years of team control, who was the best starting pitcher on the market. And at the time, it felt like giving up Drew Pomerantz and Alex White was a lot. Didn't turn out to be that. But it's a similar situation. I know that was eons ago, but that's the same way they should think about this, where you can accomplish multiple things.
This is a better situation.
Yeah, you can accomplish multiple things at once. This team's actually proven that at its best, it is absolutely a World Series contender. Right? They have beaten good teams. That's a crazy thing. They can't beat the crappy teams. So they can go toe-to-toe with anybody when they're going well. And they also have a sunny outlook. So there again, this isn't like, there are some years where, a team's really good, but you also can tell that it's that 1 year, it's that shot and that's it. Or it's the end of the run and you're trying to make additions to just, you got one more shot at this. This isn't that. But this is a team, this was a start that you can't let go to waste. If you don't make any moves, where does this team end up? Do they end up like do they barely hang on to win the division? Do they get a wild card spot? Are they sputtering toward the finish line? Or maybe this was a mirage the last few weeks and they'll rebound and they'll be okay. I don't know. And your trade deadline moves aren't going to be the only thing that determine how the next couple months go. But man, if they sputter to the finish line and they don't make moves, then what was the season? It would feel like a really lost opportunity.
It would. And I've said this before. I, to some degree, feel like we're yelling at a front office that understands these things.
True.
And is probably, in having these conversations, coming to the same conclusions that we are. I still believe they're going to make at least one semi-significant move. Probably more. Because everything that we've talked about, they realize too. And they're trying to, it doesn't have to just be a 2024 thing. It can be let's give ourselves the jump start on making sure we squeeze all the juice we can out of this start and where they're at. And then use that to help catapult us into 2025 and beyond.
There's one other issue.
Oh, no.
Every single player you do not acquire could go to the Twins. Could go to the Royals. Could go to the Orioles.
Why would they do that?
Why would
they do that? Because they're below you in the standings. And I'm being told when you're playing like Cleveland is, it's not worth it.
Do you know what Kansas City's biggest need is?
Not being told that by the one person in your mentions that says they should sell.
The Royals need relief help. They already added Hunter Harvey. They could trade for Tanner Scott, Carlos Estevez, Kirby Yates, Kyle Finnegan, Pete Fairbanks, Yimi Garcia, Jason Adam. I mean, there's so many good relievers out there. So the Royals' biggest weakness is probably the easiest thing to solve. So they could get better. I think the Twins, they could add really anything. The Orioles have the farm system to go get whoever the top, if it's Crochet, if it's Fetty, if the Blue Jays dangle any of their starters, if the Tigers do want to give up Tarek Skubal, my money would be on the Orioles to go acquire him. So the other teams you're vying for the AL pennant with are going to get better. And again, it is as important, if not more important, for Gavin Williams to rise to the occasion, Bo Naylor, Andres Jimenez, those guys, because that matters for this year and beyond.
And more than that, Jose and
Yeah.
and Quan and Josh Naylor, those guys have got to show up.
But if we just limit our scope to the next week, you have to know that those teams are going to fix their weaknesses, or some of them.
Or give it a shot at it. Yeah. But that's okay because, again, everybody but one is not going to win the World Series. Doesn't mean you don't try. Doesn't mean you don't give it some decent chance when you're already in this position.
What do I always say? The line that just annoys me, unlike any other, is, well, you just have to get hot at the right time. Because you know who has the best chance to get hot? The best teams. It's not rocket science. Guess what? There's a better chance that the Phillies will get hot at the right time than the White Sox will.
I probably feel pretty good about that, yeah. We've talked about what the players need to do. Who are the players that need to play better? We'll call them out. And us calling them out is nothing new. They know they need to be better. We're talking about what the front office needs to do. You need to help rescue a team that got you to this position. So help give them what they need to stable the decks. I don't know why that was what came to mind, but I don't think you stable the decks.
Maybe they should have tried that on the Titanic.
They absolutely should. And instead of just playing the sad violin music that you played earlier.
That's right. Way to tie it all together.
What about the third element of this? This is where we would say Terry Francona would earn his money. By holding this together. He had the uncanny ability when the sky was falling, and even if it was, he'd make you believe it was okay. You talk to him, and it's all right. We'll weather this storm. Now here's Stephen Vogt, who's never been in this position before as a manager. He's seen it as a player, I'm sure. He's seen how managers handle situations like this. Are you the guy that's constantly calling for the team meetings and chewing people out? Are you the guy that doesn't want to do that at all and takes a complete hands-off approach so that now the players wonder if you're even invested? You know, how much do you get involved? What do you say in those situations? This is where a guy really earns his money because anybody can manage a team when everybody's playing their best. Well, maybe almost anybody, maybe not me, but almost everybody else could manage a team when they're going perfect. But what happens when the shit hits the fan? This is when Stephen Vogt has to really earn his money. And on top of that, a guy that I know you guys talked to last night and had a bunt base hit when pulling something out of Major League. You're backup to the backup catcher who's been earning a little bit too many plate appearances than I am comfortable with here recently, Austin Hedges. You paid him to essentially be a player manager. He also has to earn his money. This is why you bring in a player like this to help, again, stable everything. So how are they from that perspective, at least from the little bit that you've seen?
I think we have to wait and see a little bit. First of all, I don't care what the manager says publicly. Stephen Vogt already has done a master class on saying nothing, less than nothing. I mean, that is common in sports. I feel like Bill Belichick sort of popularized it, but we're used to front offices saying nothing. You're seeing it from managers too, and Stephen Vogt just, I can't remember the last time he offered up some valuable information in a public setting, or, I mean, it's this, the cloud of secrecy over the smallest things is incredible. So no, I don't expect him to get in the post-game interview room and be pounding his fists and yelling about his team or throwing players under the bus. Terry Francona didn't do that either. I think he had some tact, and I think he'd be more candid at times than we've seen Vogt. But, Vogt says, I like the way we're playing.
That was
we're
always
not
a
in
strategic
funk.
thing.
It doesn't matter. What matters is what he says behind closed doors to his players. And I think that's where it becomes easier to maybe get a glimpse of what that's like is through the eyes of Austin Hedges. He's the lieutenant in the clubhouse that's going to be that conduit between the coaching staff and the players. Even if it's not, he's not relaying their messages for them, but he's also been through this. He was on that Texas team last year that came storming out of the gates, was playing better than anyone thought, and then really struggled for a long stretch and then won the World Series. Now, he was traded to them midseason, so he missed that early part, but he has experience. He has understanding of how to maybe push through when you're not at your best, or make sure, a big thing he was talking about last night was ensuring that these young players don't feel like they have to be the one to carry everybody else. I think that's natural for any player to want to do, especially when an offense is slumping. You feel like you've got to be the guy to deliver that big hit the home run, energize the dugout, whatever. So, it was interesting. I mean, maybe they were just talking about recapping the British Open, the Open from over the weekend, or maybe they're talking about, I don't know, where they're going to get a cheesesteak this weekend. But I thought it was interesting in the clubhouse last night. Austin Hedges held a little powwow at his locker with Stephen Kwan, David. It started with David Fry and Bo Naylor, the three catchers who are in every single meeting every single day. And then Kwan joined him, Josh Naylor joined him, Will Brennan joined him, and they talked for a while. And wouldn't surprise me if that was, hey, we need to step up here. We have to be the quote-unquote veterans of this offense that's been slumbering. And I think Hedges is smart about this. He even said, I said, like, how do you go about that? Is this a team meeting? Is this when you want to make sure the young players aren't pressing and aren't feeling the weight of the world on their shoulders? Because everybody realized, everyone knows that division lead was huge and now it's not. And so how do you make sure everyone is in a healthy frame of mind to where they can perform on the field? And he said, well, we don't wait until now. We don't wait until, as you said, the shit hits the fan. We've been having these conversations all along. So there's definitely leadership in that clubhouse. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but you never know exactly what sort of value to put on that. And it's easy to get carried away with it when a team is going really well. And it's easy to dismiss it when the guy like Hedges just can't hit. And it's hindering your team more than it's helping, at least on the field. But this is where you learn. And I think especially for a new manager and a pretty new coaching staff, it is valuable to have someone like that in the clubhouse. But again, the thing that they did so well that they haven't done as well lately is making sure that your struggles are limited to a couple days. This is the only time all year where they've had this extended slump. So, you got to stem the tide here really quick.
And I believe it when Hedges says there are people in there that are thinking, I've got to save the day myself, all on myself. And I think you could tell yourself, no, I don't have to be that guy. But God, from a human perspective, imagine any time, any part of your life, things were going crazy. You just think, I got to put it on myself. And then you look back weeks, months, years later, and you think, what the hell was I doing? I just made things worse. But it's tough in the moment. You want to be the guy. You care so much. I don't know how much the words of Austin Hedges will carry there. Sometimes you hear it, but it just you understand it, you know it, but you can't apply it. But it does feel like, this is more than just a little bit of regression. And I guess that's the one saving grace that I'm holding on to, is because things are so bad that you almost can't explain that. Just the pendulum's going to swing the other way. Really? To this level? I'm not really sure. When you're seeing guys with everybody's average in the last week or two is hovering in the 150s. Really? That's regression. We're talking about major league ball players here. And if you were to say, well, they're not going to be hitting 300 this week, they're going to be hitting 230. Okay, but this is like another step and a half below that. Like it's almost been so awful that I don't believe that it could ever continue to this level. And it would need to continue to this level to play this bad for a prolonged stretch. And I believe in Jose. I believe in Josh Naylor long term. I really believe in Stephen Kwan. And I've liked what I've seen from Angel Martinez, and I really believe in continuing to give him everyday at bats. I think he's earned them. I think you needed to make a decision at shortstop because Rocchio is just getting completely exposed. And God, last night was that was the final straw for me. No matter what he's doing defensively, you need to make a shift there because you just can't live with the offense that you're getting. But things have been so bad that the only thing that I can explain it is everybody's in their own heads. Everybody's trying to play the role of hero here, as opposed to earlier in the year when not everybody was on the same page. Not everyone was on fire, but what did they do so well? Everybody took a turn, and it almost got frustrating, right? Because we'd be like, well, we're in evaluation mode of Tyler Freeman, and he had 6 bad games, but then he had that 1 3-run home run, and so I'm right back in. But they did a great job of just cycling through, and everybody did their job earlier in the season. Right now, you're not seeing a lot of that, and I don't know. It's easy for us to just scream, get back to doing that. But they're going to have to if they're going to get back to any sort of winning ways here. And I really think to some extent it's going to, because regression can't be this bad.
The gift and the curse of baseball is that it's every single day. In the NFL, if you have a bad game, you have to sit on that for a week. In baseball, you sit on it for a night. And the best performers are so good at turning the page. And that's why Terry Francona would preach that day in and day out. It does not matter what happened yesterday, because that will not have an effect on what happens today. We can't let it. And I think the gift and the curse here is that it's great. You're in a slump. Well, here's another opportunity the next day to get out of it. The curse is that when you have an extended stretch like this, it feels like this is forever. It feels like this is the new reality. And it can be hard to escape that. And you need to see some hits fall in, and you need those reminders that, hey, I laugh when I see people saying, like, back to the comments I was getting last night, which that will cut it there. Like, I don't need to be reading my replies anymore. That was a one-time thing, I think. We believe what we want to believe. And if we thought something and the opposite was happening for a long time, and then what we thought happens, we assume we were right all along. I understand that they were playing over their heads for 90 games, but that's 90 games. This has been like 20. Okay? So even if I don't think the 90 games were a 100% accurate reflection of the team's ability, that has to hold more weight than 20 games. And as you pointed out, I don't think Stephen Kwan's a 400 hitter. I also don't think he's a 150 hitter. I do think he's closer to 400 than 150. So
188 in his last 4 games.
So I
didn't think I'd ever see a 4-game stretch like that from Stephen Kwan.
I don't think you can only buy into the 20. I don't think you should only buy into the 90. When things were going really well in those first 90, we were still saying, you got to add this, and you got to add this, and you got to add this. So the last 20 games should put those flaws under a microscope and apply more pressure to the front office. But as you said, as we always say, and the reason that we're here doing this and we're not on the radio or TV giving scorching hot takes to try to inflate our viewership is because the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And sometimes that's boring, but that's just the way it is. Sometimes it doesn't have to be the club music, and it doesn't have to be the sad violin music. It can just be music.
It can just be music. The music that accompanies a trade as the guy goes to the clubhouse. That's the kind of music I would like. Well, as we said, the schedule's going to be all over the place. We'll be back at some point later this week at Patreon. We're going to have bonus shows based on moves, and you might get a free show dropping over the weekend. I don't know. It's going to be chaos. Embrace the chaos. Embrace it.